serving is petals. This is, I think, this has been repeated, so many times, even in speeches by honorable members in the parliament and other fora. It's such a beautiful philosophy that you should collect taxes from a taxpayer, just like the bee you've seen, sitting softly on the petals of the flower. It sucks the honey and then it leaves without causing any kind of harm to the flower. Okay. In fact, the day in Agartala, I came across this quote by Guru Rabindranath Tagore. He said, if you pluck a flower, then you are not taking the beauty of that flower. It's a beautiful quote. I think it means probably the same thing. So you should collect taxes without harassing the taxpayer. So this kind of philosophy is, this kind of very advanced and modern philosophies were there in the ancient texts, which were reflected also during the rules of various dynasties and kings in medieval India. I will not go into details. I will probably refer to this again, another quote from an ancient text. Kalidas, the great poet, in his book of poems Raghubansam, while praising King Dilip, he said, it was only for the good of his subjects that he collected taxes from the people, just as the sun draws moisture from the earth to give it back 1,000-fold. Why does the government collect taxes? The idea is very simple. We show in the definition also. It is for public purposes. The idea is to take and then give back, but not 2 times, 3 times, but 1,000 times. So I think this is a beautiful philosophy again, embedded in one of our ancient texts. Okay, even during the Mughal period, we had these systems. Okay? Mughal period. This is in Shivaji's time. All right, a couple of slides on Northeast India, because Northeast Indian history is something, I should say, unfortunately, and let's admit it, it's not only taught in schools in across the country as it should be, but probably here also we are not very aware of our own history. Probably, at least we were not taught that much. Now, of course, you have, as I said earlier, you have, for example, the internet, so you get a lot of information. So, in modern day, I mean, in Assam, as you know, the Ahoms, they ruled Assam, a great part of modern day Assam, in fact, bigger than that, for about 600 years, 1228 to 1826. Okay? So they had a big empire, and then they had this frontier outpost, that is outpost at the frontiers of the empire, and they had what are known as the toll gates and gateways, the chowkis and the duars. Okay, so at these toll gates, the chowkis and the gateways, the duars, the gates, the doors, some officers were posted. They were the customs officers, the frontier customs officers. They were called the duarias. So these customs officers used to monitor the import and export of goods. So whenever something was coming in from outside, or if something was going out from outside, they used to monitor that, and they used to collect import and export duties accordingly. Okay, so they had a wonderful systematic system. Not only that, within the empire, within the kingdom, they had this, officials appointed by the king. They were known as the Hatkoas. So they were in charge of collecting taxes on different commodities in marketplaces. Hat, they call it hat. Okay, Guwahati. So hat means market. Okay, so this system was there. This is the first Ahom king. All right. Right here in Manipur. Are you familiar with this? This system of, an organized system of taxation was also there. In fact, this was there, we are told, since a long time back, but it was supposed to be made more organized during the reign of King Loyumba. Okay, that was, I think, in the later part of the 11th century. So it was much, in fact, it was much, earlier than the Ahoms. So what is this Lalup system? Anyone has an idea? Anyway, I'll tell you, it's a very interesting system. So every able-bodied male member of the society, okay, between the years of 16 to 60, they were required to render mandatory service to the king for 10 days consecutively in every cycle of 40 days. That is, you render service for 10 days, take rest for 30 days, so that makes it a 40-day cycle. It translates to about 3 months in a year. If you see that, it comes to about 90 days in a year, 3 months in a year. So this system was there. So against the service rendered, these male members used to be allotted land on which no taxes or no revenue was to be paid. So it was an indirect form of taxation, whereby instead of paying taxes in the form of grains to the king, the male members were rendering service to the king. So later on, of course, there was a system where if you want to take leave, we take leave, for example, in government service, we take casual leave and earned leave. If you want to take leave, then you could have to pay 12 annas. This must be, I think, a more recent arrangement. But this system actually was also there later on, subsequently in the case of the Ahoms, in the Ahom kingdom. They call it the pied system. In fact, we see similar systems even in Meghalaya, amongst the Jaintias, Meghalaya of today that is, and then in the Dimasa kingdom. Where is the Dimasa kingdom? Any idea? Kashari kingdom. Yes?
Assam.
Anyone from Dimasa region? This is Dimasa Hasao, that is Haflong, which was in the news lately because you must have seen pictures of those landslides, right? But anyway, so this system was there. In fact, there were so many taxes. Okay, courtesy my colleague Mr. Sachidananda, I got to know that there were so many other taxes in Manipur, imposed by the king. For example, there was a tax called Kiwa, tax on ferries and water transport. I think it's a very modern kind of system, you should say. Then if you want to use water bodies for fishing, then you have to pay this tax called Inpam Senkai. Okay. Similarly, whenever the king's army used to defeat other tribes and other kingdoms, then he used to get taxes and tributes. Okay, this was known as, of course, we know that, we call it Loipot. The last one is very interesting. This very, I should say, regressive and unfair kind of tax was there. It was called Chandon Senkai. That means if you want to put chandan on your forehead, then you would have to pay taxes. Okay, you can read it up, it's very interesting. There was a lot of protest against this tax, so these kind of taxes were there. The other day I was in Agartala, so there they have, of course, a beautiful palace, which was, the seat of power of this Manakya dynasty. They ruled Tripura for about, I think, 500 years or so. So there they had, two kinds of taxation, one for the plains and one for the hills. In the plains they had a land taxation system, okay? In the hills they had, just like we had in Manipur, they had a system of gifts and tributes from the tribal chiefs. Okay? They used to give, the tribal chiefs used to bring elephants and, other forest produce to the king. They used to present that regularly. In the hills, they used to also impose a house tax. That is again an interesting snippet. Anyway, so now we come to the last segment of history in India, the British period. Now, the British period, I don't want to go into detail. We all know what the British did to us. Okay, so only point I would like to emphasize is that they played with taxes in such a manner that they could transfer, wealth from India to England. And how they did that? Two examples I'll take. First example of, salt. Salt is something that every household uses, right? It's a daily use item. So, for example, what they did on Indian salt, they would impose heavy taxes. Okay, so these taxes were very costly, to the people when they go out to buy. On the other hand, they allowed salt from England, from Liverpool and other areas, to be imported into India without any kind of duties. As a result, in the market, the Indian salt was there and the British salt was there, and the British salt was much cheaper. Okay, so obviously people would prefer to buy the British salt, right? This is how they did it. Number one. Number two, the example of handloom products. India was otherwise that time known as, it was a world-class producer of fine handloom products. So now, and of course everything was manufactured in India, So now what they did was, the British, allowed the export of raw materials for handloom products to England without paying, without creating any barriers. That is, in England there was no barrier, so they could enter without paying any duties. So to the British manufacturer who has a factory in England, he would receive these raw materials at very low cost. Okay? And using these low cost or cheap raw materials, he would do his manufacturing, and he would ship the final products to India, where again they were made by a favorable tax regime. So again, the goods could be sold there the British goods could be sold within this captive market in India. India was a big market. In fact, the share of India in the world, in world trade, before the British came, it was about one quarter, about 25% or so, approximately. And when the British left India in 1947, the share of India's share in world trade was down to single figures, 3% or 4%. That is how they damaged India economically. So I'm not going to this. So finally, people revolted, as you know, 1857. Okay, I'm doing a bit of history, so please bear with me. Then, as I said, whenever there is a war, there is a need to introduce new taxes. It happened exactly in India as it happened earlier in Britain and in America. So in 1860, income tax was introduced in India by Sir James Wilson, who was the finance minister, you can see at that time, in order to compensate for the losses incurred during the mutiny of 1857. So this is how income tax, as we know, in India came into being. In fact, this was 1 year earlier, if you recall, than in America. In America, it was introduced 1 year later in 1861, if you recall. Anyway, so James Wilson, right? Brief history of income tax in India is this. 1860, we had the first Income Tax Act. It was, that act was repealed and replaced by another act, 1886, and then repealed in another act, 1918. 1922 again, the earlier act was repealed, a new act also came into being. This was important because in 1922, the administration of income tax in India was done henceforth by the central government. Before, it was a levy imposed by the provincial government, the state governments. So 1922, it became a central tax, which continues till date, right? That's it. Then after independence, of course, we had the Income Tax Act 1961, which is in force till date. Now, I started with the definition of tax by saying that the taxes have to be levied under some authority of law. This is embedded in our constitution. Article 265 is very clear on that. Okay? And we also have a three-tier, structure, tax structure in India, three-tier federal structure. We have taxes levied by all the three tiers of government. For example, the central government levies, income tax, central GST, customs duty. Government of Manipur, for example, levies, state GST. Okay. Then the IMC, the Imphal Municipal Corporation, for example, levies, property tax, right? If you, the entrepreneurs, if you have if you're setting up a business premise, then you have to take, not only trade license, but you also have to pay property taxes, shop taxes, that is, on your business premises. So these are some of the taxes we have, the structure in India. Okay. So let me summarize whatever I've been speaking for the last, few minutes in one slide. So the only lesson that we learned from history, I started with the Egyptian civilization and then we discussed a lot of other things, is this, that civilization and taxes, they go hand in hand. So there is a lesson from history. Okay, history is a witness to this fact. So with this, let us answer the question that the professor posed for us, and which I am reposing to all of you, that what would happen if there were no taxes? Okay, let's try to answer this. I have already told you about this. That is, if there were no taxes, the professor would have, that 1 crore of rupees that he has already paid will be in his bank account. So he'll have more money in his bank account. No GST means everything is cheaper. The cars, everything, the equipment we see here, our clothes, everything is cheaper. So on the one hand, you'll have more money, on the other hand, you'll have cheaper goods and services. So that means the economy will really prosper, will flourish. People will be buying and selling things. This is how it will happen. In fact, if this happens, India will become a global manufacturing hub. Okay, because no taxes, so all the manufacturing companies across the world, they will flock to India because they would like to manufacture here because of no taxes, right? No taxes on income, no taxes on goods, nothing. So it's therefore very close to bliss, paradise, utopia, right? I asked the question, utopia or anarchy. So this is how it is. Another thing that will be close to utopia is that people like me and people like Tamil Chandra, who have been sending notices to people here, we would be jobless. In fact, we would be out of jobs. Some of us would be giving job interviews again, probably. This is another aspect why it will be utopia. Well, the bad news, I should say, is that whatever benefits that we've just talked about, they will be there, but they will be there only for short term. The benefits will be there only for the short term. Let me explain. For that, we need to look at that 1 rupee coin. That coin which a child in my story swallowed, right? We started this story. So that 1 coin belongs to the government of India. That 1 coin of the government of India, where does it come from? This is a chart. This is as per the budget estimates of this current fiscal. Let me summarize this. Too many data is there. Let me summarize this. This is a summary. Then where does this 1 rupee come from? So out of 1 rupee, as you can see, 58 paise comes from taxes, both direct and indirect. Okay? Income tax and GST combined and customs. Another 7 paise comes from what are known as the non-tax receipts. Okay? For example, government of India recently divested Air India. They sold Air India, right, to the Tatas. So in return, the government of India got some money, right? So that is part of this 7 paise, for example, non-tax receipts. So 58 paise taxes, 7 paise non-tax receipts, they make up 65 paise. And then the remaining 35 paise is what the government borrows, okay, to make its expenditures. This is technically, of course, this is called a fiscal deficit, as we know it, right? So this is the picture here. Now, where does this money go? You have the sources, and then this is the application of that money. Let me again summarize for you. Where does 1 rupee of the government of India go to? As you can see, the major part, 1/3, more than 1/3, goes to welfare schemes and subsidies. Okay? Then a big chunk, 27 paise, more than a quarter, they are transferred to the state governments. Because as per the constitution, it's mandatory, it's mandated therein to transfer, the state should have a share of the central taxes. Okay? Then you also have to transfer to finance commission and so on. So everything combined is about 27 paise. Okay? Then on the right, you have 8 paise towards defense. Again, a big chunk of money. 8 paise out of every 1 rupee. Then 9 paise, I've clubbed everything else under 9 paise. If you look at the lower right figure, there is 20 paise, 20%. 20% of the expenditure of the government of India goes towards interest payments. Why so? Because if I go back, I'm borrowing 35 paise this year, and I also have been borrowing earlier, okay, the fiscal deficit. So because of my earlier borrowings and current borrowings, I need to pay interest to the lenders, right? So out of 1 rupee, just imagine 20 paise is wasteful expenditure that way. I mean, let me call it wasteful because it cannot be diverted, for example, to welfare schemes. It cannot be, for example, transferred to the state governments. Okay. So, in fact, if you see, for every 1 rupee, okay, rather, for every 35 paise, 20 paise is actually going towards interest payments. So, it's a huge percentage. That means we are borrowing a lot, the government of India. So again, another summary is that these are the major items on which the government spends its money: infrastructure, social security, welfare schemes, and defense. So what if there were no taxes? What would happen? Number one, let's talk about, the government expenditure will have to go down, right? Because 58 paise out of 1 rupee come from taxes. Suddenly you take out 58 paise. So that means then if you take out 1 rupee, 58 paise from your revenue, then the logical thing for you to do is to also reduce your expenditure, right? That's how it will match. So that means your infrastructure spending will have to go down. So there's railway lines that are being laid, the roads, the highways that have been built, or the maintenance of roads and bridges, they will stop. Very important, next point, social security schemes will have to be curtailed. Okay, that means, the social safety net they were providing to the poor people, that will just simply vanish. No welfare schemes or less welfare schemes and less subsidies. Okay, direct impact on vulnerable groups as well as on farmers also, of course, as well as on entrepreneurs and the startups. The last point, defense, as we saw, was one of the major items. And why so? That's because the defense of the country is paramount, right? So if we have to curtail the defense expenditure, then there will be a reduced size of our military. Okay, we said India had I think, what did I say? Second largest military in the world. So that will have to be, curtailed. This will obviously bring the threat of external aggression. Will make that threat very real. So you'll have a direct impact on the security, sovereignty, and the integrity, territorial integrity of the country. Okay, so if there are no taxes, this is how it's going to be. You can see, for example, on some of our neighbors, very friendly neighbors, just coming to our doorstep, knocking our doors. It's going to happen. Now, the other point we saw was that 27 paise goes to the state governments. That will again stop, which means the key sectors which the state governments administer, like for example law and order, police. The policing work will suffer, which means that whatever level of safety and security that we have in our society, that will go away. Okay, so probably it won't be safe for us to venture out in the night or wherever. So these kind of things will be there. Of course, I should also mention hospitals and education. It's already there. We all know that. Now, you might say, okay, if there were no taxes, we saw 58 paise from taxes and 35 paise from borrowings. Why don't we simply, borrow more and keep our expenditures at the same level? Well, theoretically you can do that. The only problem is that the more you borrow, your fiscal deficit will go up, right? Simple. Now, as we borrow more, you will come to a stage where you would have to borrow to, fund your earlier debts. This is what is known as a debt trap. Okay, it's not very different. Of course, it's not very different in a way at a fundamental level from, for example, what is happening with all these Ponzi schemes, which are there. We've all been reading about it. On the news, and we've been seeing how people have been misled by some of these organizations. Okay? It's something like that. It becomes unsustainable. That is, the system will become unsustainable. In fact, it will become so unstable and unsustainable that the government will go bankrupt very soon. This is what's going to happen if you keep on borrowing. So this is a summary, or this is the answer to the question I posed. What if there were no taxes? We said there will be some benefits, okay? But these benefits, as I said, will be only for the short term. They will wither away very fast. In fact, In fact, society as we know it, the economy as we know it, would simply crumble without taxes. If there were no taxes, then these elements of modern society, I don't know whether is there a laser? Anyway, these elements of modern society that we take for granted, security, basic security, the security of our borders, we take it for granted. This, modern, simple things for our daily comfort. Our schools, our hospitals, the military, the infrastructure, the roads, okay, even the emergency services. We have seen how important that is during the pandemic. Okay, all these things we take for granted, and which are in fact the structural elements of what constitutes a modern society. All these things will simply vanish, which means we wouldn't have a modern and civilized society if there were no taxes. So the answer, utopia or chaos or anarchy, I suppose, is that we would descend very quickly into chaos. Okay, this was already envisioned by none other than the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. He once remarked that if you want to overthrow a government, then one of the quickest methods is to simply stop paying your taxes. So if the professor, myself, and other taxpayers, and all of you, we all decided, okay, let's stop paying taxes. And if you do that, then the governments of the day, they will fall within a matter of weeks, probably, or months. Okay, this is what the father of the nation said. The same thing. In fact, this is the answer. Okay, I'm just repeating. Okay, that therefore, if we want to have a modern society, okay, a modern governance system, then we need to have taxes, right? In fact, I keep asking this question to everyone, that do you subscribe to Netflix? Do you? Yes? Alright, I do subscribe, not only Netflix, we also have so many other streaming services. We have Hotstar and other platforms are there. So when you subscribe to Netflix, you do pay a fee, right? A monthly or an annual, whatever your plan is. So that is your subscription to get these services. Similarly, if we want to get these services that we take for granted in a modern world, in a modern society, then these taxes are the price that we pay for it. Okay? The cost. In fact, what I'm trying to tell you is already embedded in the official logo of the Income Tax Department. On the right is the official logo of the Income Tax Department, which is probably there, I think, on the cover of this diary that we distributed, right? So if you see in the logo, below the words, Satyameva Jayate, you can see, 3 words being written in a curved way, right? That actually reads as Kosh Mulo Danda. Kosh Mulo Danda. This is adapted from Arthasastra, as which was written by Kautilya, as we discussed. So in Arthasastra, Kautilya wrote Kosh Mulo Danda, which means cost means revenue is the price, the cost of civilization. So if you want to have, civilization as we know it, then there's a price to it. Nothing comes for free, right? Nothing comes for free. That's the law of nature, I suppose. So that is what was said in the year 300 BC, long time back, 300 BC by Chanakya, which is now part of the official logo of the Income Tax Department. So these words underline the importance of taxes in governance and in human civilization. Okay, I talked initially about the Internal Revenue Service of America, right? The IRS, as they call themselves. So this is the headquarters in Washington DC. Beautiful building. Okay. So on the walls of this building, these words are inscribed. It's not visible, so I've written down it there for you. They have written that taxes are what we pay for a civilized society. Taxes are what we pay for a civilized society, which translates to Kosh Mulo Danda, right? This they attribute to one of the Supreme Court judges who apparently said it, remarked it, sometime in the early 20th century. But the same thing was there in an ancient text in 300 BC, written down, and now part of the official logo. Okay, so that is what is taxes what for. Okay. So now that we know that, taxes are an inherent part of our lives, of a civilization, another quote which all of you must be familiar, I'm sure, that there are only two certainties in life. One is death, the other is taxes. So for the entrepreneurs who are here, there is a presentation by my colleague who would explain to you not about death obviously, but about taxes and how to comply, because ease of tax compliance is one of the other theme for today. Now I would only take 5 more minutes or less just to talk to you about tax compliance in just a few slides. This is the 58 paise we talked about. Okay, so there is share between direct taxes and indirect taxes. Okay, last year this was the thing. So if you see, let me go back. So I think there was a remark by the professor who said 52% comes from. You can say that. Or he said, I think he talked about the growth rate. I'll come to that. So 52% of the tax revenue of government of India comes from direct taxes, income tax that is, and the rest 48% comes from GST and other indirect taxes like customs. Okay? This is as per last year's figure, of course. You're all familiar with this. Just to remind you that we are from the Ministry of Finance in the Government of India. Now the Income Tax Department is administered by this apex body called the Central Board of Direct Taxes. Okay, it has a chairman and 6 members. And the administration in the field, that is across the country, that is administered by what are known as regions. There are 18 regions across the country. Each region is headed by a Principal Chief Commissioner of Income Tax. In the Northeast region, we have a Principal Chief Commissioner of Income Tax in Guwahati. Okay, as you must be aware, the recruitment, for the Income Tax Department is by way of two routes. One is through the Civil Services Examination conducted by UPSC. The other is through the Combined Graduate Examination conducted by the SSC, right? So if you want to, come and work for the Income Tax Department, you can choose either of these routes. I just wanted to tell you about this. It's interesting. And probably, underlying the importance of taxes or, in the growth of the economy. See, I said income tax was introduced in the year 1860, right? So in the first year, the collection of income tax was a very modest sum of just 30 lakh rupees. And then it began to rise. 1962 or 61, we had a new act. So when the new act began, we had about 300 crores of collection. We crossed the 1,000 crore milestone sometime in the early 70s. Now in 1990-91, okay, this is the time when the economy of India opened up, right? Okay, during the Prime Ministership of Dr. Narasimha Rao, P.V. Narasimha Rao and when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister, we all know that. So when the economy opened up, the tax collections had reached about 10,000 crores. Now after 1990, that is after the economy opened up, the growth in income tax collection has been, so fast that probably there is no other parameter, fiscal parameter or economic parameter, which has grown at such growth rates. For example, in just 10 years, in the next decade, we saw tax collections rising by almost 7 times to reach about 68,000 crore in 2000. Okay? Then in 2003, we reached a very important milestone wherein we crossed collections of 1 lakh crore. So before 2003, income tax collections in India used to be measured in terms of crores. How many crores collected, this much crores collected. After 2003, we speak in terms of lakh crore. So 1 lakh crore, it became 10 lakh crores in 2017-18. And last year, in financial year 21-22, the collections reached an all-time high of 14.1 lakh crore. Okay, that is income tax collections. In fact, I should say this is the amount of money which has been contributed by the income tax payers. Okay. So when I say lakh crore, do you know how many zeros are there in 1 lakh crore? That is, after, when I say 14 lakh crore, how many zeros are there after 14? Yes, 7? 14 lakh crores, after 14, if you have to write down on a piece of paper, how many zeros you'll put?
8 zeros.
8 zeros. Any other answer?
10, 100,000,
Yes? 12. That's correct. 1 dozen zeros. This is how it looks like. 14 lakh crores.
14
So if you
lakh.
have this kind of money, what would you do? Probably we can have a full day discussion on that. If I have 14 lakh crores. My immediate answer would be, I don't think we'll be able to spend this kind of money in a lifetime. Anyway, so this is the kind of money that the taxpayers are paying, for the development of the nation. Okay. Now tax compliance, I will not be handling. My colleague will be handling. Just preliminary remarks. I start with this quote by Albert Einstein, the great mind. He remarked that the hardest thing in the world to understand is income tax. A man who gave us, the theory of relativity, who said E equals mc squared, he said he can't understand income tax because it's very complicated, apparently. Well, I don't quite agree with him because tax compliance, I should remark, very candidly now, and that tax compliance has been made very simple over the last many years. I think we talked about the PAN number. Okay, so if you do, all of you must be having PAN numbers, or if any one of you doesn't have PAN number, now you can generate PAN number instantly within a matter of seconds without incurring any kind of cost. The e-PAN number. Okay, that is one. So once you have PAN number, and if you are a taxpayer, if you have to pay your taxes, okay, just like the professor was paying 6 lakh rupees per year, then these are the modes of paying your taxes. Okay, normally the taxes from salaried people are deducted as source by way of TDS, but for the entrepreneurs, the startups, you'll be paying more through advanced taxes. Okay, you can also pay at the time of filing your returns. That is called self-assessment tax. And sometimes there is some discrepancy and you get a notice for payment of additional taxes, due taxes from the department. Then you pay what is known as a regular assessment tax. Okay? So all these methods of tax payments now can be done very conveniently from the comfort of your homes or offices or anywhere. Can be done online. Okay, that is one. Second thing, filing of returns. Okay, I think Mr. Joychandra also spoke about the importance of filing of taxes, filing of returns. Filing of returns, as he has already remarked, comes with a lot of benefits. So now filing of returns has been made extremely simple. There is a dedicated platform called incometax.gov.in. It serves as a one-stop platform wherein all taxpayer-related services are there. Okay, that is one. Secondly, you might say, this thing is there, but how do I fill up my income tax returns? It's very complicated, you might say. Now the answer to this is that we now have a system which is called pre-filling of income tax returns. Pre-filling. It's filled up. When you try to fill up your income tax return, you'll find it's already pre-filled. Someone has already filled it for you. So the government income tax department has taken this initiative whereby items like your salary, like your interest income from banks, dividends from shares or mutual funds, okay, capital gains on sale of securities, and even your TDS and other tax payments, they'll all be pre-filled up for you. You don't have to fill them up. In fact, last year when I tried to file my return for the assessment year 22-23, I found that my returns were already pre-filled. My salary income was already there. The bank interest, my bank interest, savings bank interest was already there. I had some dividend from some mutual funds which I was holding. It was already there, all accurate. Even my TDS, which was deducted by my DDO, was already there. So 99% of the work was already done, and I just have to check the figures a bit, put some other miscellaneous entries, and then I file my returns with so much ease. That is what the department has been trying to do for the taxpayers, making tax compliance much easy. Once your returns are filed, they will be processed. Now this processing, some of the professors would remember, used to take months and years. Now they are being done within a matter of days. Okay? Even refunds which are due to you will be directly credited to your bank accounts. You don't have to run around for that. That is one thing. Okay? So, we have now tax administration in India, which is very modern and which is driven by certain philosophies. First philosophy is this, that we regard taxpayers as partners in nation building. Okay? So we want to provide quality services to the taxpayers. They are our clients, our valued partners. Now, this is one thing I would like to talk about. I think the professor was complaining about the notices, that people are receiving. Now, I would like to tell you here is that we have a philosophy wherein we emphasize or we believe in voluntary tax compliance, and we repose, full faith on the taxpayers. Why I'm saying this is because of these two data. 99%, rather more than 99% of the returns which are filed, they are all accepted without asking any questions whatsoever. No questions asked. 99% of the income tax returns which are filed by taxpayers across the country, they are accepted, and once you file, the matter is over. No questions asked. Only a small percentage, in fact less than 1%, that small percentage, a tiny percentage, that is picked up for further scrutiny, further audit. And the reasons for that also is very specific. It's not general reasons. Okay? It is given in the notice, and even the methodology is where we don't have any kind of human discretion. We have algorithms built into the systems, so the machine, through machine learning, the machines picked up these cases for scrutiny. This is how advanced the tax system we have right now in India is. Okay, so if you feel the department is treating taxpayers as as unreliable or dishonest, it's completely misplaced. This is precisely because of these figures I'm quoting. Okay, that is one. Now, the other aspect is, even for that tiny percentage, less than 1%, whose cases are picked up for scrutiny, we now have a platform which the Honorable Prime Minister launched, in August 2020, when the entire country was reeling under the first wave of the pandemic. So he launched this system called Honoring the Honest. Okay, and under this system, we now have what are known as faceless, no face, faceless income tax proceedings. So that means even if you receive a notice for audit, okay, then once your proceedings start, you see, as for you as a taxpayer, you will not know who is the tax officer or the assessing officer who is assessing your return. And similarly, the tax officer will not know whose case he is assessing. Okay, so it's entirely faceless. It's like a screen, kept between the taxpayer and the taxman. So that means there is absolutely no physical interface between taxpayers and taxmen, and you realize the significance of it. I don't have to spell it out for you, right? So this is the kind of system we have right now. Okay, so I believe now you will not call us, people with hearts of stone. So this is, in fact, heart of stone is, this is where we are, in fact, where we are more known for the role of enforcement. Whenever you hear about income tax, people say the first thing that comes to their minds is income tax rate, right? So this is, again, another role that we have to play, because fighting black money, the black economy, that is extremely important, okay, because black money pushes the country backwards in terms of development, okay. So we have also have this role, but here also I would like to tell you that this kind of enforcement action, like surveys and search and seizures, the raids as we call them, these are done only for the big cases where where we have some kind of credible information that big evasion of taxes is going on. Okay, so we have what is known as intelligent enforcement. We use technologies in a big way. Okay, so these are my final remarks, that we have a modern tax system, okay, where the taxpayers are considered as our partners, and therefore we emphasize, or we have, providing quality services to taxpayers high on a priority list. We have a very high level of automation and computerization, okay, which have been embedded in our systems, which has made compliance easy for you. We have also minimized human discretion, okay, and this is very significant. In fact, we are one of the most modern we have one of the most modern tax systems in the world, okay. And as I remarked earlier, we also have for enforcement what is known as intelligent enforcement, wherein we use, technological tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning to detect evasion of taxes. Okay, so we have a non-intrusive and a non-adversarial, as we call them, administration of taxes in this country. Okay, so this is the theme, that the broad theme that we all are, the paradigm shift that we'll find in the working of the department, that we make it a point, starting from the Honorable Prime Minister, to thank each and every taxpayer. Because, nation building, we started with these words, right? Nation building. This is our collective duty, and I said it earlier in my speech. This is something that we have to take forward, this task as partners. Okay? So my final words to everyone here, especially to the students, and the entrepreneurs, whom I referred earlier as job creators and wealth creators, and rightly so, is that, this quote by Dr. Nelson Mandela, I think is very apt, when we discuss, the importance of taxes and, the role of taxpayers in nation building. He said that in order to build the nation, we must all exceed our expectations. Very simple. There's a simple, tonic or a simple solution that is given. Individually, let us exceed all our expectations. We all have capabilities, we all have skills, we all have knowledge, access to other resources. Let me shout from here. I'm just winding up. So we need to, we need to work hard, I should say, so that we realize, our true potential to the fullest. Okay, and we can therefore contribute in our own, in our own ways, in our own individual ways, to the growth and development of the country. And the objective for you, let me lay down for you, we are at 75 years of independence. Okay, the next milestone would be 100 years of independence, right? So 25 years from now, India will be entering 100 years of independence. Okay, so India at 2047, that is going to be the theme, okay, going forward. And this is when, will be that point of time, I think, especially for the students, the youth, this is where you would be in, responsible positions of power and, in leadership. You would be having, your own businesses and, your own ventures. Some of you would probably, land up in public service like some of us. Some of you would be working in different fields. So all of us, all of you have this onerous task to transform India into a developing country and make it a developed nation by the 100th year of our independence. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you.